Your grandmother never bought a single bag of tomato fertilizer. She never tested her soil or studied a planting chart. Her tomatoes still came in heavy enough to bend the stakes. The neighbors used to slow their cars just to stare at them. Yours probably crack, rot at the bottom, or barely fruit at all. You water them on schedule and feed them like clockwork. Still, they sulk in the summer heat and give you almost nothing. That gap has nothing to do with luck or a green thumb. It comes down to 7 mistakes she simply never made. Most growers make at least 3 of them every single season. The good news is that none of them are hard to fix. You will not need new tools or costly products for any of this. You only need to stop the small habits that ruin good plants. Grandma learned these lessons the slow way, over many long summers. You get to learn them in the next few minutes instead. If you grow your own food, subscribe before we begin. This channel is made for people who still garden the old way. None of this is fancy, and every bit of it truly works. Every fix here is simple enough to start in your garden today. So grab a notebook, because the first mistake is a big one. The first one hides inside the most ordinary chore you do. Watering seems simple, so almost nobody stops to think about it. Most people give their tomatoes a light splash every single day. The soil looks dark and wet on top, so the job feels done. Just under that thin layer, the roots stay bone dry. Shallow water trains the roots to sit near the surface. Those lazy surface roots dry out the moment the sun hits them. Then the plant wilts by noon, even though you watered it. Grandma watered deeply and far less often than you might expect. She soaked the ground until the water reached down several inches. Deep water pulls the roots down where the soil stays cool. A plant with deep roots can ride out a brutal afternoon. She also watered on a steady rhythm, never by her mood. Tomatoes hate a feast and famine pattern of wet and dry. Let the soil go dry, then flood it, and fruit splits open. That same swing pulls calcium away from the growing fruit. The bottoms turn brown and sunken, which is blossom end rot. People blame the soil when the watering can was the real cause. She watered the ground itself and never the leaves above it. Wet leaves overnight are an open door for fungus and blight. Water sitting on foliage in the evening invites brown spots. So she watered early, at the base, close to the roots. Morning water soaks in before the day turns hot and dry. The leaves stay dry, and disease loses its easy foothold. A slow, deep soak once or twice a week beats daily sprinkles. Push a finger 2 inches into the soil to check it first. If it feels damp down there, your plant does not need a drink. If it feels dry, give it a long and patient soak. This one change alone will fix half of most tomato troubles. Get the water right, and the plant forgives almost everything else. Number 2 happens on the very first day, at planting time. Most people dig a small hole and drop the seedling straight in. They bury it at the same depth it sat in the pot. It looks correct, tidy, and exactly like the picture on the tag. That neat little hole is why the plant stays weak all season. Tomatoes are strange in a way that most vegetables are not. They grow brand new roots anywhere the stem touches damp soil. Every fuzzy hair along that stem can turn into a feeding root. Grandma knew this well, so she buried her seedlings deep. She pinched off the lower leaves before setting each one in. Then she planted them so 2/3 of the stem was underground. Only the top cluster of leaves stayed above the soil line. All that buried stem turned into a thick web of new roots. A bigger root system pulls up far more water and more food. That hidden underground stem becomes the real engine of the plant. More roots make a sturdier plant that shrugs off wind and heat. If your ground is cold or heavy, dig a shallow trench instead. Lay the seedling on its side in that long horizontal trench. Bury the stem sideways and let the leafy tip curve up gently. The buried side roots just the same, but sits in warmer soil. Within a couple of weeks, that plant will outgrow its neighbors. A shallow planted tomato spends weeks just trying to hold on. It builds a thin little root ball and never quite catches up. The deep planted one is already reaching for water far below. This trick costs you nothing and takes 10 extra seconds to do. You simply strip a few leaves and dig a little bit deeper. Do it on transplant day and the whole season shifts for you. Grandma never bought a bigger plant to get a bigger harvest. She just planted the small one far deeper than you ever would. Try burying your next seedling right up to its top leaves. You will feel the difference when you tug that stem later on. The third mistake is being in far too much of a hurry. The first warm week of spring makes every gardener impatient. The sun comes out, the air feels soft, and out go the plants. 2 nights later, the cold returns and the tomatoes just sit there. Cold soil is the silent killer of an early tomato crop. Tomatoes come from warm places and hate a chilly root zone. When the soil is cold, the roots simply stop taking up food. The leaves turn purple or pale, and growth grinds to a halt. Even if the plant survives, it sulks for weeks afterward. Grandma never planted by the calendar or one lucky spring day. She planted by the soil, and she waited for it to warm up. She wanted the ground near 60 degrees before anything went in. Warmer soil around 70 degrees is even better for fast growth. A cheap soil thermometer tells you far more than the air does. She also watched the nights, not just the sunny afternoons. If the nights dropped below 50, her plants stayed under cover. There is a second half to this mistake that people love to skip. Seedlings raised indoors have never felt real sun or wind. Move them straight outside, and the sun scorches their soft leaves. This is exactly why hardening off matters so much before planting. For about a week, set them outside for a few hours daily. Start them in the shade, then give a little more sun each day. Bring them back in at night while the air is still cool. Each day they toughen up and thicken their tender young leaves. By the end of the week, they can handle a full day outside. A hardened seedling barely notices the move into the garden. A soft one wilts, bleaches, and takes weeks to recover. Grandma traded 1 week of patience for a whole month of growth. Wait for warm soil and toughen your plants before they go in. That patience is the real reason her plants took off so fast. If any of these sound painfully familiar, tell me in the comments below. Say which mistake you have been making and subscribe on your way there. The next 3 are the ones that decide your actual harvest size. The 4th mistake comes from a good and generous instinct. You have a small garden and so many seedlings to plant out, so you tuck them in close together to fit every last one. Squeezed in tight, they look lush and full for a few weeks. Then the humid heat of summer turns that lushness against you. Leaves that touch never fully dry out after rain or watering. That trapped damp air is exactly what fungal disease loves most. Blight and leaf spots spread from plant to plant through contact. One sick leaf becomes a whole bed of brown, curling plants. Crowded roots also fight each other for the same water and food. Grandma gave every tomato far more room than seemed necessary. She spaced her plants at least 2 feet apart along the row. For the big sprawling types, she pushed that closer to 3 feet. All that open air let the leaves dry within an hour of rain. Dry leaves give disease almost no chance to take hold at all. Good spacing also lets sunlight reach the lower fruit and stems. Sun and airflow together keep the whole plant strong and clean. Crowded tomatoes also ripen slower because the light cannot reach them. Fewer plants with room will outproduce a crowded jungle every time. 6 healthy plants beat 12 sick ones fighting just to survive. It feels wrong to plant fewer when you have all those seedlings. Give the extras to a neighbor or grow them in pots elsewhere. Do not cram them into a bed that simply cannot breathe. If your plants are already crowded, thin out the weakest ones. Pulling a few now can save all the rest from disease later. You can also trim the lowest leaves to open up the base. Air moving through the bottom of the plant keeps rot away. Grandma would rather pick from 4 strong plants than 10 sickly ones. Space is free, and it is the cheapest disease control there is. Give each tomato its own room and airflow will do the rest. A garden that can breathe rarely turns brown in the midsummer heat. Number 5 looks like real care, but is actually overfeeding. A worried gardener sees a slow plant and grabs for fertilizer. They pick the strongest feed on the shelf and pour it on. Most of those products are loaded with heavy doses of nitrogen. Nitrogen grows leaves, and soon the plant looks huge and green. You feel proud of that tall, bushy monster of a tomato. Then you notice there is barely any fruit hiding inside it. The plant poured all its energy into leaves instead of tomatoes. Too much nitrogen tells a tomato to grow foliage, not flowers. Grandma fed her plants too, but she fed them for the fruit. Early on, a little nitrogen helps a young plant get going. Once flowers appear, the plant wants phosphorus and potassium more. Those two feed strong blooms, firm fruit, and better flavor. The right feed at the right time makes a real difference. She leaned on compost, and aged manure worked into the bed. That slow, gentle feeding never pushed out a wall of soft leaves. A balanced tomato feed is far safer than a rich lawn feed. Check the 3 numbers printed on the front of the bag. If the first number towers over the other 2, put it back. A high, middle, and last number suits fruiting tomatoes much better. She also knew that more food is not always the better food. Overfed plants grow soft and tempt every aphid in the county. Lean, steady feeding builds a tougher plant that most pests avoid. If your plant is all leaf and no fruit, ease off the nitrogen. Stop the heavy feed and let the plant shift toward flowering. A handful of wood ash adds potassium for a better fruit set. Bone meal worked into the soil brings phosphorus for the roots. These old amendments did the job long before boxed chemicals arrived. So feed your tomatoes for fruit and keep the nitrogen light. Grandma grew fewer leaves and far more tomatoes than most people. Match the food to the stage, and the harvest follows on its own. 3 mistakes left, and the next one shapes the whole plant. Before that, hit subscribe if these old methods are making sense. It costs you nothing and helps this kind of gardening stay alive. The 6th mistake is simply letting the plant do whatever it wants. A tomato left alone will throw out shoots in every direction. New stems sprout in the joint between the main stem and each branch. Gardeners call these little shoots the suckers of the plant. Left alone, every sucker grows into a full stem of its own. Soon one plant becomes a dense thicket of competing stems. All those extra stems split the plant's energy far too many ways. You get a mountain of leaves and a scatter of small fruit. The crowded middle traps damp air and hides slugs and disease. Grandma kept her vining tomatoes pruned to just a few main stems. Once a week she pinched out the young suckers with her fingers. She removed them while they were small and soft as a thumb. That kept the plant open, airy, and focused on real fruit. Fewer stems meant bigger tomatoes, and far more of them. The plant stops feeding useless shoots and starts feeding your dinner. She also stripped the lowest leaves off the bottom foot of stem. Those low leaves catch soil, splash, and rot before anything else. An open base lets air move and keeps disease off the plant. One warning matters a great deal before you start pinching away. Not every tomato should be pruned in the same heavy way. Bush types, the determinate ones, set all their fruit at once. Prune those hard and you throw away much of your harvest. Leave the bush types mostly alone apart from the lowest leaves. The tall vining types are the ones that truly need pruning. Read the tag or watch how the plant grows to tell them apart. If it keeps climbing all season long, it is a vining tomato. If it grows to a fixed size and stops, leave it be. For the climbers, pinch weakly and tie them to a strong stake. A supported, pruned vine gives clean fruit up off the ground. Grandma spent 5 minutes a week keeping her vines in line. That small habit is why her tomatoes were huge and clean. The last mistake is leaving the soil around your plants bare. Most gardens have neat brown dirt between every tomato plant. It looks clean and tidy, so nobody thinks it is a problem. That open ground is quietly working against you every single day. Bare soil in full sun dries out within just a few hours. The roots swing from wet to dry no matter how you water. You already know what those swings do to fruit and calcium. Bare soil also bakes hot and stresses the shallow feeder roots. Worse, every hard rain splashes soil up onto the lower leaves. That soil carries fungal spores that cause spotting and blight. Splash by splash, disease climbs up from the ground into the plant. Weeds love that empty space and steal water and food too. Grandma covered every inch of bare ground with a thick mulch. She used straw, dried grass clippings, shredded leaves, or old hay. A few inches of mulch kept the soil damp for far longer. The roots stayed cool and evenly moist through the hottest days. Steady moisture meant less cracking and far less blossom end rot. The mulch also blocked rain from splashing dirt onto the leaves. That single barrier stopped most soil disease before it even started. Fewer weeds pushed through, so the plants kept all their own food. As the mulch slowly broke down, it fed the soil for free. Lay it down 2 or 3 inches thick around each plant. Keep it pulled back a couple of inches from the main stem. Mulch pressed against the stem can hold too much damp on it. Do this right after planting while the soil is still moist. You are trapping all that early moisture in for the weeks ahead. Grandma never watered anywhere near as often as her neighbors did. Her mulch was quietly doing half of that watering work for her. Cover your bare soil, and the whole bed holds together far better. It is the easiest of these 7 fixes to go and do today. Look back over these 7 mistakes, and one thing stands out. Not a single one of them needs money, gadgets, or more land. They are all just small habits done a little differently. Water deep and steady, and keep it off the leaves. Plant deep, wait for warm soil, and toughen your seedlings first. Give each plant room, feed it for fruit, and prune your vines. Then cover the soil with mulch and let it do the quiet work. Grandma never knew the science behind any of these old habits. She just watched her plants closely and learned what they wanted. You now have in a few minutes what took her many summers. Pick one mistake you recognized and go fix it this week. Then come back and try the next one down on the list. If this helped your garden, subscribe for more old growing wisdom. Your best tomato harvest is a lot closer than you think.